Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.
The National Weather Service.
And good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 13th of July. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information at weather.gov/Alaska, calling the weather info line at 800-472-0391. And remember, you can always contact us via email at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. It's kind of a long email, but once you have it in your system, boy, you can fire off an email real easily. And we all know how easy it is to talk about the weather on our email. If you have questions about the new websites, it's a great way to get a little bit of help. If you can't find something like the Mesonet sites, the list of all the weather stations around Alaska that we had in text form, those are coming back really soon. If you'd like to find the map version of that to see the highs and lows or precipitation across your area, that's available now. But drop me a note. Let me know how I can help you find the new parts of the website as we've migrated to kind of a new updated version here. Whether you're a mariner and headed out into the Bering this fall, or just looking to check the fish and the weather conditions up and down Cook Inlet or inside Prince William Sound, that's a great way to do it. I'm happy to help. And of course, social media is always there as well. NWS Alaska on Facebook, and NWS Alaska, NWS Juneau, NWS Fairbanks, and NWS Anchorage using the hashtag AKwx for Alaska weather. And of course, our daily afternoon map briefing always on YouTube. It has been a hot day. And you would have known that if you would have checked out on social media. We've been talking about that on Twitter with our friends at NWS Fairbanks and on NWS Alaska. Certainly on Facebook as well. You got the heads up it was going to be a toaster roaster of a day there in the interior. Record high tide at Deadhorse, at least 83 degrees. Now, why is 83 degrees important? Well, it is the record maximum temperature that we know of, at least in the record-keeping data there. But in that region there, 83 degrees is well above the normal. That's in the mid-50s this time of the year. So atrociously hot, uncomfortably hot. I'd love to know how you get by when that temperature is that warm in places where it typically isn't. Send me an email. I'd love to hear your story. In Fairbanks, it was close to 90 degrees. Now, 90 degrees is also important because it hasn't been that hot since about 2014. And many locations around the Middle Tanana Valley were already near 90, maybe a little bit above 90. Probably at your backyard it was above 90 degrees, but officially at the Fairbanks International Airport, as of about 3 to 4 o'clock, I believe it was only about 88 degrees. So within a skosh, almost there, but really, we're going to quibble over a couple degrees. That's hot, right? Temperatures in Tanana officially as of late afternoon with 89 degrees. And that was the official late afternoon warmest place in Alaska. And all that heat, of course, is drying things out. It does not take a whole lot of effort to rapidly dry things out across Alaska. So we have high fire danger once again across the central and the upper Yukon Valley, as well as the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, parts of the interior of the Seward Peninsula, southwest around Bethel, and Haines once again, drying out really quickly there. So no surprise with recent warm temperatures and lack of precipitation. We are right back in the mix there for high fire danger. Nothing really on the extreme side yet, but again, it wouldn't take a whole lot more of this to make that happen, of course. Here is a look at the visible satellite picture, and since we are in a east to westerly flow coming off the continent off of western Canada, what does that do for us? Well, you have played weather long enough with me that you know that this east to westerly flow is a continental flow, and that brings in those easterly waves, and that creates convection, which is rising air currents, as you know, which helps to initiate showers and thunderstorms and all of those bubbling clouds across the mountains, across the Middle Tanana Valley and into the Upper Tanana Valley and the Upper Yukon Valley, even over the Kenai Peninsula, and certainly southwest Alaska. These are showers and thunderstorms. And if you're planning to go out fishing or have somebody that's out fishing anywhere in these areas, and gosh, we probably know at least one person that is, Probably wouldn't hurt if you can reach them on the radio or the cell phone to say, hey, remember your lightning safety rules. When thunder roars, go indoors. Hard of hearing, we've got another one for you. You see a flash, make a dash indoors. And you want to wait 30 minutes there until the last sighting of lightning or the sound of thunder has been heard. That's when you know the chances the storm has passed and out of your area. Did you know lightning can strike 10 to 12 miles away from the core of that thunderstorm? Well, that pretty much accounts for those bolts from the blue stories that you've always heard, right? If a thunderstorm is way over the horizon, and that's about 10 miles or so, give or take, maybe 20 if you're up a little bit, that lightning could certainly reach over the horizon and seemingly coming from the blue sky where a storm is not, at least from your vantage point. So 10 to 12 miles, that's a lot of space. And remember, you can count when you're out in the wild and you see a flash of lightning or hear thunder. The flash would help though, because once you count to the flash count, 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5 1,000. 5 seconds, 1 mile. That's the speed of sound as we know it. And of course, if you relate that to the flash of the lightning and the sound of your thunder, you can estimate the distance from your position to that thunderstorm. And that can come in real handy to know if you are too close. Basically, if you hear it, you're close enough. Here's a look at the infrared satellite picture, and I want you to look up here across the Chukchi Sea. This very sharp line of cloud cover moving into the western Bering and through the Chukchi coast is the next cold front. And if you're around Wainwright to Barrow, you've probably already heard us talking about the potential of an ice shove coming in from some of the higher concentration, thicker ice from Wainwright to Barrow there. So here's the story on that. The updated information from the Alaska Sea Ice Program says we're not really expecting much of an ice shove anymore. So there's good news there. Confidence is improving on that. However, there is going to be a lot more ice, and it's moving fairly quickly there from Wainwright to Barrow. There's two things going on. First, we have the current going through the Barrow Canyon right along the Chukchi coast. That's moving pretty quickly there from southwest to north and east, really fast. But opposing that is that northwesterly flow pushing the ice closer to the shore. And as that happens, we're going to see which one wins the day right now. So far, it looks like the current is going to move most of the ice along the coast. Now, while some of those are bigger chunks of ice, that could mean some coastal erosion in a few areas. But it doesn't look like a lot of that ice may make it up onto the shore as we were previously concerned about. So continue to monitor the situation, listen to the radio, and you'll get more information that way, or find us online. You can certainly do that at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. And that is the latest and greatest website there. Check that out if you haven't recently. Here's the weather map. There's the cold front up there across the Chukchi coast. That is moving from northwest to south and east and should approach the coast as we get into tomorrow night and into Friday. As you'll see on the map, there's another front coming in, so we're going to repeat this as we get into Friday night and Saturday. In the meantime, nice weather in southeast. Totally different story there. Temps are in the 50s and 60s there today. Hardly a drop of rain I saw in any of the observations. Around Hyder, a few showers it looks like. High pressures offshore at 1,023 millibars. A good day to be out on the water in Prince William Sound as well. Showers and thunderstorms had popped up across the interior, the Copper River Basin, the upper Tanana Valley, and the upper Yukon Valley, and the eastern Brooks Range. Low pressures south of Sand Point. A few drips and drizzles there around Sand Point, but that was about it for the Aleutians as far as the official observations go. And in southwest, showers and thunderstorms had developed there. High pressure sitting south of St. Lawrence Island. It's at 1,024 millibars. All of that working to just keep the heat on for the interior and the North Slope, of course, this afternoon. As we get into tonight, warm air is going to race across the Bering Strait. There will be showers and light rainfall out ahead of that. To the south, showers and thunderstorms may continue across the Alaska Range and westward into the YK Delta. There may be a few pop-up showers across southeast. Things still look fairly dry there. And south of Sand Point, low pressure is going to drag in some moisture there. Some of that could reach Kodiak Island and southward through the evening hours. As we get into Thursday, the front's racing across the Bering Strait communities there. It will be late in the afternoon and evening before it makes it there, and not until Friday before the front gets close. But notice that southwesterly flow setting up across the Chukchi coast, and high pressure is already moving out of the way. But it should be a fairly dry day for many on the North Slope, and again, another warm one for you in the interior as well. Showers and thunderstorms across the Alaska Range, showers for the higher train of southeast, and light rainfall is possible for the Alaska Peninsula. Drips and drizzles for the Aleutian chain with high pressure still south and west of St. Matthew. For Friday, the front will have moved onshore for the Chukchi coast and past Point Barrow to almost Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse. With that comes more clouds and rainfall, but relief from some of the high heat that you've experienced today. Low pressure will sit south and west of St. Lawrence Island. Showers and thunderstorms are expected once again across the higher terrain of the Alaska Range as well as the Talkeetnas and maybe into the Copper River Basin. South of that, though, things look fairly dry for southeast. South central by and large, Cook Inlet as well as areas almost down to Kodiak Island where showers will start to pick up once again. The Alaska Peninsula and the eastern chain looking at light rain and drizzle, and YK Delta could see some light rainfall as well, with clouds thickening up across a large part of the Bering as that weather system drops in from the north. Like I said, there's another system coming in behind that, so as we get into the weekend, be prepared for another return to southwesterly flow with a return after that right back into northwesterly winds. Temps this afternoon were in the 50s and 60s for southeast. Haines made it up to 72 degrees. The capital city was in the lower 60s. Valdez, 73 very warm degrees, and many locations around the Copper River Basin were even warmer than that, mid-80s in some parts. Lower to mid-60s around Prince William Sound, Homer, Kenai, 70 in Anchorage by late afternoon, 75 around Squetna, northward to Talkeetna, milder. 85 was the 3 o'clock temperature in Fairbanks. Remember, I said many locations around the airport were at least 89, and in some cases above that 90-degree mark. Even an hour later it was warmer. 81 around Eagle, 82 for Fort Yukon. It was 79 around Anaktuvuk Pass. Notice the huge difference here between Point Barrow at 58 down to 80 degrees at Atkasuk. You can get even further southward toward the mountains, and temps were in the mid-80s there. Kaktovik was 56, and again by late afternoon, Deadhorse had made it to 83 degrees. Kotzebue Sound temps in the 50s and 60s. Shishmaref 57, 48 around Wales, 54 for St. Lawrence Island. Unalakleet in the upper 60s. McGrath a blistering 85, 83 in Bethel. And Bristol Bay temperatures were in the 60s and 70s. The Alaska Peninsula just shy of 60 in many locations, mid-50s for St. Paul and St. George, and 51 out around Shemya. Overnight lows are going to stay warm for many in the low valleys there, upper 50s and low 60s all the way into the interior, 40s and 50s for the north coast, 50s for most of the Alaska Peninsula as well as Bristol Bay, 54 around Kodiak, south central in the mid-50s, southeast, lower 50s for you. A high of only 44 in St. Lawrence Island tomorrow, with the north slope back in the upper 50s to mid-60s, except ahead of that front. Once you get to the east again, Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse could easily make it into the mid-70s. Chances are you're going to be warmer in many locations, especially southward. Once you get over the Brooks Range and into the Yukon Valley and the Tanana Valley and the Kuskokwim Valley, temps will be in the upper 80s to nearly 90 degrees again, and that could mean Fairbanks as well. So keep cool, do what you need to do, and take plenty of water breaks and take it easy there if you're not used to the heat. Upper 60s for many in southeast, south central, upper 70s for most locations there. Prince William Sound, probably talking about mid to upper 60s to upper 70s in some locations. 60 around Kodiak, Bristol Bay just shy of 70, and the Alaska Peninsula and the chain holding in the 50s. IFR conditions will continue mainly offshore, but into Norton Sound we go. You can see IFR starting there in the morning, and there could still be some showers and thunderstorms going in southwest. IFR to start in some parts of eastern sections of Kodiak Island and the Bering Sea coast, as well as St. Paul and St. George. Some improvements there out across the west coast. You'll see that pull out to the Bering in the morning, but IFR for many in the Alaska Peninsula and the chain, as well as the Pribilofs and IFR, could work its way into the Barren Islands region, as well as Raspberry Island and the northern end of Shelikof Strait, with MVFR hugging the outer coast of southeast with showers and thunderstorms developing in the afternoon. Past conditions, VFR really all the way around it looks like. We're watching for convection in Lake Clark and Merrill Pass and Rainy Pass, of course, Windy Pass, as well as Isabel Pass. Showers and storms there developing in the afternoon from Antasta Pass. Tanita Pass expected to be VFR. The same goes for Portage Pass, and Chilcoot and White Pass, of course, looking pretty good. Freezing levels are still showing a lot of heat wrapping all the way around the Gulf. It's the cool spot sitting in the Gulf at this point, with levels down to 8,000 to 10,000 feet. So not a whole lot of change from what we saw yesterday. Again, that high level of heat all the way around the Gulf. Showers and thunderstorms will be possible, producing localized icing issues, but most of the concerns, if any, are well above 10,000 feet south of the Alaska Peninsula and off the northwestern coast there. Again, light to isolated moderate in those areas and way up high. The jet stream has the fast-moving river of air across the north slope, anywhere from 55 knots north of Kaktovik to a much faster 115 knots coming in with the next storm system. Low pressure sitting south and west of Kodiak, with light winds there at 50 knots wrapping into the Western Gulf, and then we get back into that Pacific jet with wind speeds there also fairly light, 50 to 60 knots. And under that, 9,000 feet, you can see our ridge of high pressure here, guiding in all the weather well to the north, anywhere from 30 to 45 knots coming in from the west. Wind speeds considerably slower across the west coast, north and easterly winds there out over the Bering at 10 to 20, and light winds coming in from the north and west over the Panhandle. Our ridge, once again at 3,000 feet, is fairly clear. Light winds over the interior. Once you get north of the Brooks Range, wind speeds there are 20 to 30 knots from the west and southwest, with a ridge over the Bering, low pressure south of the Alaska Peninsula, and winds anywhere from 20 to 30 knots coming in from the south for the Western Gulf. As far as turbulence goes, not a whole lot of problems, it looks like, for the northwest coast below 4,000 feet, some light chop there. Thunderstorms again could imply some localized turbulence and wind shear. And then across the southwestern mountains, the Aleutian chain all the way down into Sand Point below 4,000 feet, and Shelikof Strait could run into a little bit of thump and bump in the afternoon. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll have an update on the sea ice edge as well as your marine forecast here in just a moment.
Hello everyone and welcome to Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Jim Peranto. Today in the studio I have the pleasure of talking to Jeff Oshinsky, who's the meteorologist in charge at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit, and he's going to talk to us about the vital products and services that the Aviation Weather Unit provides to not only Alaska, but the rest of the world. Welcome, Jeff.
Well, welcome. I'm glad to be here, Jim. Thank you very much for allowing me to come in.
Yeah. Let's start off first where the Aviation Weather Unit is located at, because I think that's important, and how it's configured.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, we're located in the National Weather Service Forecast Office building over in Anchorage, and we are a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation, and we have a staff of 12 employees total, and we run 2 forecast desks. And we basically split the state of Alaska up into 2 regions, south of the Alaska Range, which is the south desk, and then up to the north is our northern forecast desk. So that's kind of how we're configured.
Okay, and what types of text products are you producing out of the unit?
Okay, we have a variety of text products that we issue, probably the most important of which would probably be our SIGMET, which is our official aviation warning. We issue that for severe turbulence, icing, low-level wind shear, volcanic ash, and a number of other aviation hazards.
Okay, and then you also do some graphical products as well, don't you?
Yes, we do put out a suite of graphic products. There are several that we issue during the course of the day. Every 6 hours we issue 4 particular graphics charts that cover surface weather, turbulence, icing, and IFR and MVFR areas. And we also twice a day issue significant weather progs for 24, 36, and 48 hours out in the future.
And later on in the segment, I'll give out the website because it has a lot of the graphical products that you were just describing, and we'll get the information out to the folks at home. What kinds of things do the aviation forecasters look at when they're preparing a forecast? I know that there's distinct zones that the Aviation Weather Unit looks at when they're putting out an area forecast. So what kinds of things are they looking at?
Well, that's a good question. We have 25 zones in the state, and we try to break them up into climatological regions. You know, the state of Alaska is so diverse with all the varied topography and weather going on that we try to make each of the zones similar in that the same types of weather are occurring. However, because the state is so large, we do run into some difficulties with trying to differentiate between one zone and another. So to help us do that, we look at satellite imagery, pilot reports, weather observations at the surface, and meteorological model data off our computer systems.
It's a daunting task, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we try to keep the product brief, but on the other hand, we're trying to put as much information, give as much information to the pilot as we can, so we're always trying to balance that.
Now, aside from the duties and responsibilities you're just mentioning, I understand that the Aviation Weather Unit also functions on an international scale as well.
Right. We have a second kind of hat that we wear. We're a volcanic ash advisory center, and it's an international office. So it's kind of interesting. There are 9 of these centers in the world. Anchorage is one of those, and we actually cover a much broader area We cover the whole flight information region for Alaska, which goes all the way up to the North Pole and down to the Canadian border, out toward eastern Russia, and we actually pick up a good piece of Far East Russia as well that we have responsibility for.
Wow, that's huge.
Yes.
And just why is it so important to get volcanic ash information to the pilots? I know some of the folks out there already know that, but just to reiterate, why is this such an important piece to get out to the pilots?
Well, it's very, very critical. First of all, volcanic ash is a very abrasive material. It has certain characteristics that just don't lend themselves to match up well with aircraft. It's being abrasive, it can abrade windshields. For jet aircraft that have engines that operate at high temperatures, it can actually turn that ash into glass material and clog intakes. It can actually flame out engines as well, and we've had instances of that even up here in Alaska in the past. So because of past experiences, we've really come into this new science of understanding volcanic ash and really the impacts that it has on aviation.
And didn't the KLM jet, wasn't that one of the big episodes that we've had?
Right, that was the big one back in '89, when that KLM jet actually lost all 4 of its engines and descended through, I believe it was 11,000 feet or so. They were able to restart the engines, but the aircraft was damaged beyond belief. Actually, I think it was $80 million worth of damage it suffered. And as a result of that, a lot of work was put into really studying volcanic ash and ways to be able to track the ash as it moves from the source region across the airspace.
Now, you've been in this position for just a short period of time, right?
Right, oh yeah.
So how is it going? I mean,
Good. I like it. I like it a lot. I've always liked aviation. I've worked up here in Alaska in the past, several years ago at the Air Traffic Control Center. And Alaska is just a very unique place, and aviation, the aviation users out there are just a real good group of people. We get a lot of feedback, and I feel in this position we can work with our customers to really improve our services and products that we issue, and that's the way we operate. We really like the feedback and like to kind of move forward from where we are. So.
And people can give feedback to you by calling up the aviation weather unit.
Absolutely.
Or they can email you directly.
Right, yeah.
And I also invite the folks out there to check out their website, because it's got a lot of good information on there. I use a lot of the information when preparing the Alaska Weather Show every day. So I invite the folks out there to check out your website, because it's got a lot of really good information.
Right, that's great.
And thank you for coming on in today, Jeff.
Well,
I really appreciate the information. It's always nice to see you. I see you all the time at the forecast office.
That's
but
right.
Maybe we'll get you in sometime down the road again.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Jim.
And thank you for joining us here on Alaska Weather Facts. Until next time.
Now, the ice we're talking about across the Chukchi coast is this area right here of higher concentration ice. Remember that flow right along the coast is moving from southwest to northeast at a fairly good clip, but this ice is going to move from northwest to southeast, getting closer to the coast. And already watching the Barrow Ice Radar, you could see that getting closer and closer, and some of the ice concentrations already picking up with that stronger southwesterly flow. So once again, if you've got stuff along the coast, you probably want to keep an eye on what's going on with the ice between Barrow and Wainwright. And again, the latest information always online at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for the latest sea ice information. Looking at southeast, light winds across the inner channels, 10 to 15 knots, small seas 2 to 3 feet, and 15-knot winds coming in from the north and west along the outer coast with 3 to 4 foot seas for Thursday. For Friday, light southerlies moving in, but picking up a little bit more in the Lynn Canal to 20 knots with 20-knot winds from the north and west inside of Clarence Strait and along the outer coast south of Cross Sound, all the way down toward the Dixon entrance at 20 knots with 6 to 7 foot seas, westerlies as you get up closer to Yakutat with a 5-foot sea there on Friday. For Thursday in south central, light winds and small seas inside of Prince William Sound and all the way out toward Gore Point and south of Resurrection Bay. As you get into the Barrens, more of an easterly flow moving in 20 knots with a 6-foot sea on either side and 20 to 30 knot winds on either side of Kodiak Island. Light winds coming in from the south through Cook Inlet past Calgan Island and northward into the Kinnick Arm and Turnagain Arm regions. For Friday, a little bit more of a southwesterly influence there, 15 to 20 knots in all regions. Prince William Sound still looking at light winds with a 2-foot sea. The seas come up to about 5 feet across the western Gulf. 15 knots on either side of the Barrens, 15 knots inside of Shelikof Strait with a 4-foot sea, 5-foot seas east of Kodiak, and southwesterlies coming up to 15 knots with 4-foot seas inside of Cook Inlet for Friday. as well, so not quite as smooth. For Thursday in Bristol Bay, easterlies 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. Northeasterlies coming down the Pacific coast and south of Castle Cape. 8 to 9-foot seas are expected there. 6-foot seas down the Bering Sea coast with 20 knots there from the east. A little bit of a south and southeasterly shift on Friday. Winds go a little lighter there from Castle Cape to Chignik at 15 knots with a 6-foot sea. 4 to 5-foot seas for the Bering Sea coast on a southeasterly wind at 20 knots for Friday. Across the Aleutians, a northerly flow at 15 to 20 for the eastern chain. Some of the higher winds there south of Unalaska and Nikolsky with a 6-foot sea. More of a light and variable wind out across the west. 10 knots with 3 to 4-foot seas on Thursday. Becoming northeasterly at 15 from Adak to Kiska. Northerlies for the central and eastern chain. A little bit more of an easterly push though, crossing from Unalaska to Nikolsky at 20 knots with that 4-foot sea on Friday. For the west coast, it looks like a southwesterly wind across St. Lawrence Island, northerlies north of Nunivak Island. The strongest winds will be around the Kuskokwim Delta up to Etoll and Strait, 25 knots with a 4-foot sea there. Northerlies around the Pribilofs with a 15-knot wind, a 4-foot sea expected. That becomes easterly on Friday. And southwesterlies are picking up from St. Matthew to St. Lawrence Island, 15 to 25, still holding on to that 4-foot sea, but watch the 6-foot seas in the Kuskokwim Delta. And for the North Slope, once again, watch those south and southwesterlies picking up tomorrow, 25 to 30 knots with 6-foot seas there. Still watching the ice around Barrow to Prudhoe Bay and a westerly flow at 25 knots north of Kaktovik. As we get into Friday, there's that northwesterly push. 6 to 7-foot seas expected there. Watch for ice north of Barrow to Prudhoe Bay, 25 knots with a 30-knot wind north of Point Barrow and 25 knots north of Kaktovik. Once again, tonight's forecast shows showers and thunderstorms are expected to continue across the interior and southwestern Alaska with a few pop-up showers in southeast and again tomorrow afternoon. Watch for convection to continue across south central and southwest with a cold front fast approaching, moving over the Chukchi Sea and potentially moving some high concentration and thick ice closer to the shore. We'll see you again tomorrow for more Alaska weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.